Alright guys, Satchgribber here today, and I'm dressed pretty sharp because I've just come back from Swindon, had an open day with like the interns that are going to Intel in, start of July, so yeah, it's a fantastic day, got back just now to make a video on it, so hopefully I do not miss the supposed phase announcement which is coming tonight, but we'll get into that in a second here. The title of this video is to do with the state of amateur Call of Duty. Now, of course, we're going to talk about Rostermania stuff to start with. I really want to, at some point, do a video on the fallacy of the Global Pro League as I see it. Now, today is too early. I haven't had the time to prepare stuff in more detail, but I definitely want to scratch the surface of that idea today. Why the current franchising system, the way it's going, is really destroying the European and the Australian scenes especially, and hopefully I'll be able to get some guests on, some professional, well, I guess amateur players from the European scene that have been struggling with this issue. And yeah, I definitely like to make it a longer thing, hopefully over Easter. Because I think it's something that, you know, maybe the guys who work for MLG, you don't get this sort of discussion because, you know, you can't exactly go against what MLG and the CWL are doing if you're on their payroll. But so hopefully we can get something like that going because I do think it's an issue in the current state. And obviously I'm from the UK myself. I don't want the amateur scene here to completely die. On the flip side, of course, we have had some players that have come up from the UK scene and actually made their way into the Pro League now on the back of Alex supposedly going onto this denial roster with Rated Joe, Bance and Brack is going to be the team alongside Alex supposedly, and of course Dylan CoD now getting this opportunity very quickly on Reciprocity. But the amateur scene is not having the development in the UK and especially in Australia that we've seen in the States. You know, you could argue like guys like Alex and Dylan are much better players than some of the American amateurs that are getting their opportunities, you know, coming to them left, right and centre. And a lot of that is because of the fact that, well, if you're based in America, it's much easier to get you as a substitute for a league team. It's much more expensive and costly to try and get some European talent that isn't, you know, homegrown, and you guys haven't played with them in search and destroy tournaments in the past. It's very difficult to bring yourself up through that avenue. I think we got it kind of right a few years ago with the Black Ops 3 situation, with the local leagues, I guess, that gave some great competition for these amateur players to come up and running, but the current franchising system, it's not, well, at least the way it's going to have the opposite effect, and I don't like to see it, so we'll talk about that in the latter half of the video. I've already basically made all of the points I wanted to make, but we'll get to that. Firstly, let's talk about Rostermania. So, this is an update as of yesterday, so yeah, this is the situation. Phase, Scrap, Zuma, Zero, Celium, Asim, supposed to be announced tonight. We have a denial roster, as I already mentioned, Evil Geniuses, JCab, Attach, Apathy, Exotic, and Phantoms. So again, Phantoms an idea of like, obviously a very good American amateur that's getting an opportunity on EG, and there was a post on Reddit that said, you know, maybe this is the best time ever to be an amateur in Call of Duty because it's 5v5, you know, a lot of teams are making changes, great opportunities for amateurs to finally make their step up into the Pro League. And I was like, well, that's perfectly fine as long as you're already based in the States or in Canada, for example. Now, okay, denial, unconfirmed as of yet. All these are unconfirmed. UYU, Royalty, Proto, Methods, Parzilium, and Mayhem. I also have that confirmed by Drew behind the scenes, so it does seem like it's going to be like that at the current state. Of course, Envy, Hook, Decimate, Pharaoh, Aches, and Silly, which I didn't go into full depth on yesterday. There is also some clips and screenshots that have confirmed this stuff. Accelerate supposedly being sold to Elevate, which is very interesting. Not so sure what's going on here. I heard rumours, as Intel Call of Duty seems to have done, that potentially the French players from Denial could have been going onto this team, but now that seems to have been, apparently that's no longer on the table, but we'll have to see, nothing confirmed. And yeah, we'll go into the Enigma 6 rumour in just a second here. So this is the E6 roster. GodRx, Godlow, turns out to be Jet Li as it seems right now, Kismet, General and Frosty. So of course we're remaining 3 players on the team from the old roster, getting Jet Li in from Accelerate it seems, alongside GodRx, which honestly is a pretty nasty SMG duo, and that makes that Pool A deadly. Let's not forget, Pool A is the following: 100 Thieves, Optic Gaming, Reciprocity, and Enigma 6. So this seems like an upgrade. Of course, that means Chino is going to be left out of it, which we'll have a look at in a second, but that Pool A is now incredibly scary. UIU roster, supposedly this, which I already ratified or mentioned a couple of seconds ago. Of course, that leaves Chino in a situation without a team, which is a very unfortunate for him. Of course, everyone loves Money Cheen, but, you know, I guess they thought it didn't work out, and they played one event with him at Fort Worth, had decent results, but I guess they think they can do better, and I guess to some degree their run was a little bit lucky. Also seems like M. Ruiz is off this Accelerate team. He removes it from his bio as CWL Intel, he posted this screenshot. Same thing with Profesi as well, so this is going to be rather interesting. And yes, Alex tweets the following: about to start the 13-hour travel day, going to be very long but all worth it in the end. Seems like he could well be going to this denial roster, that's what I would predict, and hopefully, as I said, this video hasn't missed the phase announcement. May come out very soon after this video goes live, I do not know, hopefully it doesn't, but we will have to see. Of course, I will cover that tomorrow if the announcement actually does turn up, and this was, of course, dealt with yesterday. So, to continue very briefly, this is the start of the discussion on the amateur scene. Of course, we have the problems I mentioned at the start of the video. We also have the issues with the organizations themselves. If you follow the AM scene, you might have heard of an org called Nation of Power. We'll have a look at how their Black Ops 4 season went so far in just a second here. I was asked to share this anonymously, and this is his summary, Crone, the guy who runs this Intel account, of exactly what happened here. We'll have a look through it in a second. Nation of Power lied to the players, which led to them quitting their jobs in school, didn't stick to their contracts, left CoD the day after World Gaming Network in Toronto, owe them all money, and even Sir Scoot, you may know that name as like a big figure in the esports scene, an absolute veteran, has, well, he's in the comments here talking about how, you know, lawyers is definitely worth it in this industry at the current time. So, Jimbo, Pawns, Infamous, Archives, and Zyril signed with Nation of Power on February 11th. This was before that, well, it's a fair while ago now. In the contract, it stated that if they placed top 8 at CWL Fort Worth, March 15th through 17th, of course, this is in the amateur side of things, their minimum salary would be $1,000 a month. If they placed top 4, it would be $1,500 a month, open to negotiations for more. They placed 4th at this event. Now, of course, this stuff hasn't been ratified. Don't know if it's fully legit. It's been shared anonymously, but I'd be hard-pressed to think there isn't at least some grain of truth here, but as I always say, take it with a pinch of salt. The org kept telling them they were writing up their new contracts. At this point, they'd been paid nothing yet. The players' coach convinced the org to give them a prorated amount, $420, which they received, classic, for March since they did a good at the event, but they still owe them $1,000 each to this day. And the second half of this, the co-owner then led them on by telling them they were going to get paid $2,500 a month, and they were under the assumption they indeed were going to get paid that much. Because of that, they mistakenly quit their jobs and left school because they were fed lies. They kept asking about their contracts, but the org kept pushing it back. They continued on and went to World Gaming Network under Nation of Power, and the org got more exposure just for them to pull out of CoD the very next day. The players assume it was so they didn't have to pay them. Absolutely classic stuff from the Call of Duty amateur scene. This is how things went down with Nation of Power. Of course, they come 4th at the Open of the CWL Fort Worth, a different team back in Las Vegas, and yeah, they're probably qualifier there, that team with Robbie Beamers. They completely switch up their roster. They go to World Gaming Network, a bit of exposure, people have heard of Nation of Power at this point, and boom, pulled straight out of Call of Duty. And yeah, it's obviously crazy interesting because unfortunately, if players who have never signed a contract before in their life go up to get an offer from an organization like this and they give them some sort of contract that they don't really fully understand exactly what the terms and conditions mean to their fullest extent, then you've got a real problem on your hands because, contracts are weird things. If it's possible for the organization to prove to some degree that there wasn't even a legally binding contract in the first place due to some deliberate maybe changing of the wording or something like that, then it's possible they can get away with stuff like this, even though it shouldn't happen. And, the Red Reserve situation kind of exemplifies it. The Rated's been talking about it the last couple of days how because Red Reserve are filing for, well, it's not in bankruptcy with a company, but it's insolvency, so they're going insolvent basically. I think maybe they're filing for administration or something. Not exactly sure what Red Reserve are up to, but it's something like that. And when a company is wound up, when a company is disbanded, like it may well be, I'm not sure, this is what Rated said yesterday on Twitter though, the shareholders and the people who own a stake in the company get paid out in a certain order, and often people like, the players will be right at the very bottom. So all of the capital of the company may have disappeared long before the players even get to their money, and there's not an overwhelming amount you can do about that stuff unless you employ lawyers beforehand to make sure your contract was ratified so that this event could not happen. Same things happen with Red Reserve. Of course, effectively, this is an amateur problem. Like, this is not a professional organization. Red Reserve, obviously Nation of Power as well, if they're doing these sort of things to their players, which I talked about before. And, well, yeah, amateurish. So what I wanted to do to end the video was go through this post that was made on Reddit. I'll probably skim over it. I'll come back to that in that video I plan to do on the fallacy of the Global Pro League, I want to call it. Now, this is from Dereel. He's someone that definitely has had issues with this, having the Call of Duty situation, really struggling in the European scene. Maybe not, American viewers don't get to experience it so much, but it's definitely a thing I've noticed over here. All the guys I follow on Twitter from around Europe, they're retiring, they're going back to school, something or other. Nothing really to play for, and part of it is the fact that once you've flown over to the States to play for your relatively small prize pool for the open, the amateur bracket section, I guess. Once you've done that, you know, loads of your costs are already gone down the drain. You're barely making any money off it. Like, you still need people to pay for your flights if you're even going to make any profit at all off the back of what you'll likely be earning. So it really only works for people in the States, and because obviously the most of the events are in the States, it's pretty tragic. So this is the post that was on Reddit. Unfortunately, I cannot find the post that it was actually originally made on, so I cannot give credit to who wrote this, but this is a fantastic post. I'll leave a link to Dereel's tweet where you can read all this stuff. Of course, it's in more detail right here. And yeah, you're not expected to read the whole of it, but I wanted to go through some of the key points about this today and why the amateur scene is going to struggle going forward. So let's just read through this. Fort Worth showed that having a 16-team competitive was the goal of the bosses, but it also showed the amateur game will die very quickly, not because the players do not want to play, but due to the lack of pathways for organizations and their investors to progress. Now, this is an interesting point. In addition to what I said earlier about it's difficult for an amateur player to even get picked up by a team, especially if you're in Europe and the States. Now, this guy says, old guy here, 50 plus years experience in business and esports. And he has a different take on it. Well, I guess an additional take. And it's a very interesting one. So we'll go through this very briefly. I'll leave the link, as I said, in the description box below, so you guys can check it out. Didn't want to bore you with all the figures, even though it is very interesting. The situation with Red shows us why. We had a small number of teams looking to sell their league spot, and with franchising on the horizon, they thought they could milk it to get some value for the spot. Then, Red falls in a heap. They rip their players off, treat the team and the league like trash, yet nothing is done because the organisers of the league are afraid of coming in heavy and scaring off investors from the corporate side of the house. So they've let the players get screwed, and we have an org still running around trying to flog off their spot without any leadership from MLG. This is definitely a situation I've seen occur. It definitely seems to be the case that MLG and the CWL, you know, if players are, if organizations are straight screwing off their players, okay, a little bit odd wording, but yeah, screwing over their players, then investors that are potentially thinking, okay, it's time to come into Call of Duty, buy a $25 million franchise spot, are like, well, we have so much power, this has got to be our industry. Now, even if they would have the same amount of power next season, even if MLG did enforce things more heavily this season, psychologically, it's still not the same. So, well, this is definitely a fair point. If I was a small to medium org owner, I would look at this situation and then move on. There are a number of games that are worth investing in which have very solid Twitch numbers that require less investment and allow to have your players do what they have to do to get a return on your investment. One thing also on the Twitch numbers is that I think Optic said yesterday they're not going to stream scrims any longer, which is definitely a decision that I completely understand and respect. But yeah, in terms of Twitch numbers, it's looking slow for Call of Duty once again. You can start in the BR, etc., etc. As CoD, but in CoD as it stands, you have to fund 5 players, get them to an event that may return something rather trivial, and then they will still not get the opportunity to be on the real main stage regardless of their importance. By having the pros separate from the AMs, the game has lost a strong connection to the dedicated followers, and I feel this is a huge mistake. Without the chance for any of the AMs to make the hero run, the link between the pros and the rest is gone. The new talent will not get the opportunity nearly as quickly as the teams that go into the mode that limits the reputational damage that bringing in an untried player will bring. So he goes on in the rest of the post and in this section as well to talk about his suggestions for what he would do to help improve the current state. And I'm pretty sure he's from Australia as well. Yeah, the Australian scene here. So as I say, I'll leave this linked down below if you want to read the entire thing. I'll go through it in more depth probably in a couple of weeks' time, what potential solutions he offers here. But of course, we're coming to the end of the video now. Leave your thoughts on this down in the comment section below. Anything on Rostermania or on the amateur scene more generally in this situation we've seen with Nation of Power and other organizations. It's not a good one by any means, not a good look for Call of Duty, but I guess if you're an investor and you see all this power these organizations have, you're probably, you know, licking your lips. So thank you guys so much for watching. Like if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new as always, and I will see you next time.
To whoever frags their last man.